I just got stood up again. Are you ready to talk about it, baby girl? Can I have a kiss? Thank you. Thank you very much. You want to do sound check? No sound check from the puppy. Let's get unbothered.
Everything bothers him.
He's unbothered.
He calls it unbothered, but that's what's cute because everything bothers him. He's bothered. I'm a botherina.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of Unbothered by Thai Rivera. That's right, it's Unbothered by Thai Rivera. I'm your host, Thai Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world. And, here again with the most inconsistent podcast in the world, but I've been being very good about it. If you guys haven't noticed, we're on schedule once again. But just to give you guys the heads up on me getting stood up, I'm being dramatic. Really, a friend of mine had invited me out tonight. But I know this friend. I don't know if you guys have friends like this, but this friend of mine, because here's one of the things you guys have to know about me. I'm one of the most low maintenance friends you can have because I really don't care what anybody does. And I'm not at all mad at my friend because he's that kind of friend. And by that kind of friend, I don't know if you guys have this friend in your life. I only have one of these, and he's the only one that I have room for in my life like this because everybody else is pretty chill and stable. And he's chill and stable too, has a really good job, a really good life. I don't know what he was going through tonight in particular though, but he's the kind of friend that if you don't go out right when he hits you up to go out, there's a good chance he's going to get too drunk and you're not going to end up hitting him or getting caught up with him later on in the night. So he hit me up earlier. It's Friday night right now. And he hit me up earlier and was like, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm on my couch. And then I was like, what about you? And he was like, I'm doing the same right now, but I'm thinking about going out to one of the bars and having a drink. And I was like, I could possibly be down, but I wouldn't be able to make it there till 11 o'clock at the earliest. And then he hit me back and said, yeah, I'm going to go out after all. So hit me up when you get out. And I'm flying solo tonight because he has a longtime boyfriend. And for me, I pretty much already knew this wasn't going to happen because by the time he hit me up, because the first time he hit me up, it was probably around 10 o'clock. And then the second time he hit me up, it was probably closer to 10:30. And I was just getting back from the grocery store. Technically, I was in the parking lot of the grocery store when I saw his text. And I was like, I'm probably not going to be able to be out till 11:30 now, or be able to make it out until after 11:30 now. And so my thing was, I'm just going to go ahead and get ready. I sent him a text and was like, are you actually going to be out tonight? Because I was like, I know how you are. And then I sent an LOL because, like I said, I don't really care. Because it wasn't like a romantic thing, and he's a friend that I hang out with from time to time, and I do consider him a good friend, but at the same time, like I said, I know how he is. I know that there's a good chance he's going to get drunker than he should, and then by the time I hit him up, he's going to be either passed out or in an Uber on his way home. And so but I also knew that I had to take a shower anyway, so that was a good excuse for me to take a shower. And then I got halfway ready. Like, if you notice, my hair isn't technically done right now. I got out of the shower, I blow dried it, I didn't flat iron it, I didn't put any product in it. Because when I hit him up to see if he was still out, I didn't end up hearing back from him. And so I was like, okay, this is a good thing for me. So me and my puppy just hung out, and I went ahead and cleaned my apartment again, gave it, because I give it like a weekly, like good cleaning. Throughout the week I clean, but weekly I'll give it like a good cleaning. So this gave me a good excuse to do that, clean up my bathroom, that kind of stuff. I'd gotten a haircut earlier today, which you can see, but you can't fully see because of this lighting. And I keep it chill for Unbothered. But, it's one of those situations where, like I said, I really don't mind because it just gave me an excuse to get at least halfway ready. And then once I was halfway ready, I was like, okay, well, I showered and now I might as well clean up my place. And if he ends up hitting me up while I'm cleaning my place, then I'll run out and meet him. But if he doesn't, then it's just as well, and technically even better, because I really didn't feel like going out tonight. I'm really getting back into like full on doing things the way that I need to do them. I'm finding my rhythm here at my apartment. As you guys know, I moved in this apartment in December. And so I feel like now that we're just getting into March, that I'm really finding my rhythm at this apartment, where I'm figuring out exactly the way I want to do things and how I want to structure my days, and that's going well. Then earlier today, that guy I told you guys about last week that I had been talking to, not the one that stood me up and I haven't talked to him since, the other one I was telling you guys about, that I don't know why I don't want to see him, because the mechanics of what he is should be something that I really want, but it's just not where I'm at right now. He had hit me up last night, technically, again, and sent me a couple of messages, which, like I told you guys last week, I don't really mind, and I don't see it as particularly thirsty when a person hits me up several times, because he hit me up several times, like, last night, just being kind of like, was it something I did that you're choosing not to respond to my messages now? And I just, I'll leave you alone if you want me to, but I just would like to know what I did. And so, I told him, like, basically it's just, I want to figure out what I want and what I'm doing with myself. And I don't really know what I want. And I was honest with him like that, where it was just sort of like, I don't know what I want. I mean, like, because I don't really feel like the way that my life is working right now, and with me figuring out how I want to structure my days and stuff like that, which I'm getting, like I said, I'm getting into a good rhythm. I don't know if I want to throw in a variable where now I've got to figure out this person coming over at points or me spending time with them. And when you first start a relationship or even really hanging out with somebody new, even if it's just that getting to know each other phase, it really is time consuming. And you really do have to make sure that you're willing to dedicate some time to going on a date and watching a movie and that kind of stuff. And then when they want to text, you're supposed to text back. And right now, I don't think I want that responsibility of actually being in any kind of relationship. So I'm cool to talk with him, like text with him when he wants to text every once in a while. But I don't really feel like I have that to give right now. So I'm not going to put myself in a situation where I'm letting somebody down and they're wondering what's the matter with me or why I'm not responding to them the way that they probably would want me to respond to them. So I'm just kind of letting it do what it do. And I don't know. I feel like I've told you guys before, I'm open to eventually being in a relationship again, but right now I just don't feel like it's that time. And I also don't feel like just having a hookup or having somebody over. And when I have somebody over, he's got a place too, but I don't really feel like going to anybody's place right now. And so if he were to come over to my place, then I have to put baby girl away, and I don't really feel like doing that. Which, I don't care how that sounds. Because sometimes people will be like, I'm sorry if that sounds bad. I don't care how it sounds. I'm just not in that place in my life. One thing that I think somebody took me wrong on last week, though, and I don't know if they're watching, and it's not in regards to my podcast, it's on one of the videos I did throughout the week. If you're watching my channel this week, I did the video about the girl that worked at Smoothie King that refused service. And there was a guy that's a regular viewer, and he commented that sometimes I sound like I'm down on people that work minimum wage jobs, and that's one of the things he doesn't like about me. And, or he doesn't like about the way that I communicate certain things. And here's the deal with me. I do not at all look down on anybody for having any type of job. Whatever job you do is the kind of job you do. I am very honest about the fact that when I was with my fiance, he was an assistant manager, I believe it was, of a 99 cents or more store. So clearly, I'm not judging people on where they work. But I do feel like a lot of these people that are working these minimum wage jobs that are like that particular girl really do mistake themselves for being the owners of these establishments. And that's why she felt free to tell somebody that she wouldn't serve them because of what they were wearing. And really, I wouldn't care what anybody's wearing. That's not what you're there for. You're not a political pundit. You're not at all there to be any kind of political analyst. You're there to make smoothies. That's what your job is. You're a person that makes smoothies. So don't give customers a hard time and drive out business, especially because this is what I have a real problem with. In this economy, I know, or I feel like, unless you're just a really wealthy person that decides to open up a business like the Smoothie King just to have it, just as like maybe you like smoothies and you want it so that you can have a smoothie whenever you want to. But I don't really know a lot of people are in that position. But my point is, I don't feel like those people want their employees taking it upon themselves to drive out business because they don't like what somebody's wearing. And if you're going to start doing it that way, as far as not allowing people, it's like, let's be petty about it. What if somebody walks in wearing, say, a Lady Gaga shirt, and you don't like Lady Gaga? Should you be able to deny that person service because you don't like Lady Gaga and you don't know why they would want to wear a Lady Gaga shirt? Or if it was a particular team, like say there's a rival football team to your favorite football team, at that point, should you be able to tell people that they can't, and would your boss appreciate it? Because I've had friends that have been in that game where they have a franchise. Like, there was this friend of mine, his name is Brian, and his brother decided to open up a ice cream shop, and I can't remember the name of it. It's in Vegas, and I've talked about it before because for a minute there I was going to work for them as a favor because they really just needed to fill in their schedule, like have people, because they were having trouble getting anybody to work. And it turned out, because I get along with Brian really well, but it turned out his brother, because I told Brian, like, look, if I do this, it would be as a favor to you. I don't need to work at an ice cream shop. And so I'll take it seriously, and when it's time to work, I definitely will work. But in my downtime, I'm going to be editing videos on my phone. I'm going to do things that I need to do. This was probably 4 or 5 years ago now. And my channel hadn't really done what it's doing now, where I have a lot of viewers, but I did have people watching. And I knew that I wanted to build my channel. Like, that was very important to me. And so I had to be editing YouTube videos. At that time I was doing a lot more short form content, which now I do almost none of. But, with that being the deal, and he was like, yeah, we just need people in there, and so he was like, and I was like, cool. And then once you find people to fill in, then you can just completely phase me out. Just, if you want, just get rid of me one day. Just be like, okay, cool, we don't need you anymore. We've got all the people we need. They just really need to get the store open. And he had relayed this to his brother, but it turned out his brother decided to kind of try to be a hard ass with me anyway when I went in for the interview, which to me really shouldn't have been an interview since I'm just doing you a favor. I get why there had to be one. That's why I showed up. And I was treating it seriously. I was listening to him. I was paying attention to everything he was saying. Like I said, I would never say that I'm going to do something, especially for a friend, and then half-ass it, you know? So if I say that I will work for you, then I will work for you. But if it's new and it's starting up and there's a lot of downtime, I'm not the kind of person that's just going to be wiping counters down. Like, especially if the counters are already clean, I'm not going to do that. I remember what that was like because my first job was McDonald's. That was my first job ever, was McDonald's. And they would tell us, always look busy. If there's nothing to do, then just wipe down counters. Like, literally, that's something we were told when I was working at McDonald's. Well, at this point in my life, I'm not going to just wipe down counters for the hell of it. I'm not going to just try to look busy, especially when, like I said, you need somebody. And so his brother was walking me through everything. And I'm listening and I'm paying attention and I'm fine with everything. And he's describing what everything is. And then he gets to a point where he says, and this is the break room. And it's a nice business. I don't blame him for taking it seriously. But he's like, this is the break room. And these are lockers for when you guys are at work. And you're going to keep your phone in this locker for the entire time. When you're on your break, you can check out your phone. When you're on your lunch, you can check out your phone. But outside of that, when you're working, you will not be able to have your phone on you at any point. And I was just like, I didn't say anything to him. I was chill about it. But then at the end, when he was like, were there any questions? Then I told him, I was like, yeah, I don't know if Brian had told you, but Brian had wanted me to possibly do this just to help you guys out. And I told Brian that I do or would be editing from my phone and doing things that I need to do for what it is I'm doing. Because I didn't need this job on any level. Like, there were really the job was going to hinder my regular life at that point, because it wasn't going to be enough money to sustain any, like, I don't think it would be able to sustain any part of what I was doing at that time. Like, I wouldn't go as far as saying that it would cost me money to work there, but I definitely wasn't going to be getting ahead in any way. It was just going to be kind of like me literally helping them out. And I know that now that I'm talking about this ice cream shop, by this point in the live chat, for anybody that doesn't know, 6 p.m. on Sundays, I'll do the live chat during this, and it always devolves into everybody in the chat telling me all their fat little habits, and then I get into my fat little habits too, and it turns out that me and a lot of my viewers have a lot of the same fat little habits, and then I just end up hungry, which Sundays are always my cheat day, so I don't mind, but I'm gonna let you guys know, you make me hungry every chat. Every time I do the chat, I'm hungry. But it's one of the fun parts. It's one of the fun parts because it's without fail every week. It turns into, I like eating that too. And like I mentioned Raisin Bran on one, and then we all started talking about cereal, and then that turned into something else. And then last week I was talking about not really drinking, and then people started talking about what they like to drink, and then that turned into food. And it all roads lead back to food in our chat. But it's fun. But yeah, so it really was that kind of situation. And I hate when people do that to me. And I kept it together very well. I didn't snap at his brother at any point. But I really hate when people start off with one premise with me where it's the like, we really need you. Like, you know, we just need somebody to fill in and we'll be as flexible as you need us to be and whatever else. And I'm like, cool, I'll be as flexible as I can too. And then they try to hard ass me. And it's kind of like, okay, I'm not going to be hard-assed at a sandwich or an ice cream shop. Now I'm saying sandwiches, but at an ice cream shop, I'm just not. And so once I told his brother that, he was like, yeah, well, we would need you to not be on your phone at all when you're, and so I was just like, okay, well, I wish you guys luck. And if you guys decide that you do just need a body to fill in, I'm still open to that. And it all turned out for the better anyway. They were able to get employees that they actually needed. My friend Brian also does stand up. And so he had some other comedians working there. There was at least one other comedian that quit like kind of right away because the brother tried to hard ass him on the job, like kind of just, and like I said, I get it because that's the whole point of this, what I'm talking about. It's related to the Smoothie King thing because I get why his brother was trying to be so like rigid about everything to a degree. I get that because they pay a lot to use these names. So if you slap Smoothie King on your building, since Smoothie King is a franchise and established, it's I don't know how much they're paying per month just for that name, but I'll give you guys an example. There was a point where one of the comedy clubs here in Phoenix wanted to use the Laugh Factory name, which I am a Laugh Factory regular, Laugh Factory Hollywood, the flagship flagship Laugh Factory. I'm a regular. The owner, he really, really was instrumental in the beginning of my career as far as comedy goes. And he's one of the people that I respect the most in stand-up because, a lot of times when you meet people that are either bookers or comedy club owners, you really don't feel like they know things from a comedian's point of view. And I really don't always, and it's not their job to do this, but I don't always feel like they really know what they're doing when they try to give you advice. But the owner of the Laugh Factory, his name's Jamie Masada, he saw me when I was brand new, like one of the his club was one of the first clubs I ever did the open mic at in Hollywood, or in LA. And I wasn't even living there at the time. I was doing like a mission, a recon mission, basically just getting a lay of the land and seeing where I was going to want to live or what area would be affordable for me and stuff like that. But he right away saw something in me. And so when I did the Laugh Factory open mic, the way he used to do it at that time, now he's much busier, so he doesn't do it that way anymore. But he used to sit in a corner and he'd watch every single person that did the open mic. He would do that every week. It was Tuesday, and he would do it every Tuesday. And he would critique you. And I know some people he didn't really care about, as mean as that sounds, but it's Hollywood and everybody comes there. It's like the Pretty Woman line, when that guy's like, welcome to Hollywood, everybody's got a dream, that kind of thing. And so he's dealing with all the people that just have a dream, And so he saw me and I dazzled him, girl. Just playing, but I did. I was so nervous and I was new. And, but, I was prepared because I knew I had terrible stage fright. So I really had to write everything down word for word and know exactly what I was going to do. I had to be super, super like structured at that time because, like I said, I had such stage fright. And it was 2003 or 2002 maybe at that time. And everybody wasn't open to gay like they are now. And so I knew that I had to have my ducks in a row just as far as being a gay comedian or a comedian that happens to be gay, however you want to phrase that. And so when I went in and did my open mic set for the Laugh Factory, you also have to be clean, TV clean. And so when I got upstairs, because, that's where he would critique you, is he would sit in the booth, the corner, and watch everybody. Then once that was done, everybody was eligible to go upstairs. If people had somewhere else to be, they could leave, but everybody was eligible to go upstairs. And of course, I wanted to hear what his feedback was. And, Jamie has this accent that's very, like everybody knows that's done the Laugh Factory knows Jamie's voice and Jamie's accent. And I think he's Iranian. He's like an Iranian Jew. And so he's like, body, body, body. That's the way he talks. But he was like, and he's always saying buddy. He's, buddy. He's always body, body. And so he told me, he was like, you're a very good writer, buddy, but you are very green. How many times have you been on stage? And I was like, maybe 3 or 4 times, and I was honest with him. And then he was like, do you live in Hollywood? And I was like, I do not. And I was like, I'm planning on moving here. And then he was like, when are you planning on moving here? And I was like, within the next 6 months. And then he was like, move here as soon as you possibly can. Stage time, stage time, stage time. You're a very good writer, but you need stage time. And so that's what started my relationship with Jamie Masada. And like I said, I ended up becoming a paid regular there. And I was so excited when I became a paid regular there because he put me through the paces for 2 years. And it was 2 years of having to go back. And then he would tell me what he wanted to see from me. But anyway, my point is, there was a point where they decided to turn one of the comedy clubs here into a Laugh Factory. And it was $20,000 a month that they had to pay just to be able to use the Laugh Factory name, just to be able to put Laugh Factory on their sign and have it be an official Laugh Factory location. They had to pay $20,000 a month, which I don't know what a person pays for the Smoothie King, if it's $5,000 or $10,000. But when you consider you have rent, you have utilities, you have whatever product you have to buy, which in most cases it's specified like where you have to buy everything from, and the ingredients are very specific so that things are uniform. And then you add on top of that whatever the franchise fee is. I'm sure it's no less than $5,000 a month. I wouldn't be surprised if it's $10,000 a month. I couldn't see it being much more than that, but I could be wrong. I don't know on average what a Smoothie King makes. But my point is, when you have a person that is on an entry-level position, basically, deciding for the owner that they don't get to make money off of that customer, and not only don't get to make money off of that customer, but don't get to make money off of anybody that has those political leanings. When it's 73.3 million people, I believe that was a number, in the United States that voted for Donald Trump, and you're deciding for that person that amount of the market should not be coming to the Smoothie King. And so, I said something like, just do your shitty job, and I do consider those to be shitty jobs, as far as that's why I had to eventually stop working for McDonald's, because I really didn't I don't know what they treat people like at the Smoothie King. And, my niece for a while, she's now an x-ray technician or something like that. She's making really good money, has a really good life for herself. But for a while, she worked for Jamba Juice, and they treated her really well. And I think that overall, employers are being a lot nicer to the employees. So maybe I'm wrong when I say shitty job, but I just remember every job I had like that. And keep in mind, before I decided to stop that kind of work and go to the other kind of work where I actually made money, I had worked at McDonald's, I had worked at Jack in the Box, I had worked at Burger King, I had worked for a grocery store that's one of the local Kroger chains here in Phoenix. It's called Fry's. It's, Fry's is probably the most popular grocery store in Phoenix. That's what I would probably say. People go other places. There's like Albertsons here, Safeway. There's different chains. But Fry's is probably the biggest chain in Phoenix as far as grocery stores go. And they're owned by Kroger. And I just remember that they weren't nice to me at all. And they're the regular job that I worked the longest, that level of when you're in high school or whatever. And I was a bag boy, and I had already dropped out. I was a bag boy, and I really took them seriously. And my parents had raised me to have a good work ethic and to be professional. And they were just so terrible with me. And it's really a big part of why I stopped working those kinds of jobs, because just everybody was, and I think my parents did me a little bit of a disservice in that way, because they told me to treat things like with such respect and to really pride myself on being a good employee and doing like I was supposed to do, where I noticed the people that didn't take them seriously got treated better than I did. But I think because they could tell that I actually was trying to do my best. For some people, they'll see that and they'll respect it and they'll be good to it. But for some people, they'll see that as like a weakness and something to exploit. And so I got mistreated at every one of those jobs. So to me, they are shitty jobs because they all were terrible with me, and they paid nothing, which at the time I was happy to have the money, because I was young, super young, and just trying to figure things out. And so I really was happy to have to be able to make my own spending money. And I was always terrible because the checks weren't that much. And so I asked somebody in the comments last week if they went to Lollapalooza ever, because, being Gen X, Lollapalooza was a big thing. And I remember that was when I was working at Jack in the Box, and I spent my entire Jack in the Box check just at Lollapalooza buying stupid things. Like I bought this stupid thing that's supposed to simulate an acid trip, and you point it to the sun and you blow in it. And I don't know. I spent like $70 on that or something. So it was something ridiculous. But, and Lollapalooza that year was in the worst place. It was at this venue called Compton Terrace, which is an outdoor venue. And it was in the dead of summer. It really was and there's no, literally the tent, the medical tent that's for people that are maybe taking something they shouldn't have taken, or, something had an adverse reaction, or they had an adverse reaction to something. That's what those tents were technically set up for. But that year at Lollapalooza, those tents were full of people that were dealing with heat exhaustion, dehydration. It was terrible. And luckily that didn't happen to me, but I did end up having to leave early because it was just so hot and miserable, and it just sucked, and that's when there was really the rise of, because if you guys are Gen X, you remember there was a minute where the skinheads were really trying to show up to things, the white power. And so when Arrested Development was on stage, if you guys remember them, they had Mr. Wendell, I believe was one of their songs. They had some bangers. But yeah, Arrested Development was there. And I remember when Arrested Development was on stage, if you guys don't know, they're black. There were literally people shouting the N-word at the stage. Like, that's what it was like. And I didn't feel intimidated because we were even hanging out with one of the guys that was like White Pride. I believe that's what they were called. But he was talking to us because one of my friends had known him from school, because I had gone with a group, and they had gone to school together. And the people that I was there with were several years older than I was, I want to say they were in their 20s. At the youngest, like 18. But I was much younger than that. And so I can't even remember how old I was. But I know I was the youngest one out of that group. And so they were chatting, and he was just kind of saying, what his thing was, why he's white pride, and, what that means to him and that kind of thing. And even back then, I think just being raised in Arizona, you just have a higher tolerance for that kind of stuff. I didn't feel at all heated towards him, or like, he was a bad guy or anything. I didn't agree with, because he was one of the ones that was shouting the N-word at the stage, but there was a lot of pockets of that going on. But it was the kind of thing where, if you didn't start anything with them, or was my observation, if you didn't start anything with them, they weren't going to start anything with you. But one bad thing that did happen to a friend of mine, and this is just something that does happen at these kinds of events, or I shouldn't say a friend of mine, just one of the guys from the group. He was a smaller guy. And, he went to the mosh pit, and there was a really big guy in the mosh pit, and the guy picked him up over his head and literally threw him. And for no reason, just to be a bully, or because that guy thought it was funny or whatever. And so my friend, he had to go to the medical tent because his ribs, and I don't know if a rib got broken or what happened. That day was so scattered for me. And to tell you the truth, that's when I was first learning to party, or partying. And so somebody had given me a particular substance the night before, one of those substances that keeps you up for days at a time. And I, being as young as I was, didn't realize how that was going to add to what was already going to be going on at Lollapalooza as far as the heat and all that stuff. And so that ended up being something that I was dealing with too. So I'm exhausted because I've been up the entire time. And then there's also the heat that we're dealing with. And then there's also that substance that's in my system. And so it just turned out to be kind of a miserable experience. But yeah, that gives you an idea of the kind of bank that I was making when I was working at those jobs, and maybe why I have the attitude that I do. It's not the attitude that I have towards the workers. I mean, outside of them not having, I stand by, none of these people should be turning away business for anybody. If you don't want to do the job, then don't do it. If you're not built for the job, then don't do it. If what people are wearing is going to trigger you, then don't do the job. That's where I fault people. That's where I'm like, yeah, you shouldn't do that. And I used to do a joke about it on stage, where I would mention, that I worked for fast food, until I realized that I didn't really care what you wanted on your sandwich. I didn't care how many ranch packets you needed. I didn't care how many croutons you wanted for your salad, crouton packets, because back then McDonald's had the salads. I don't even know if they still have the salads. I'm sure they have some version, but back then McDonald's had the salads, and we had to actually, there was a set amount we were supposed to give people, but if people requested more, and I remember this one couple was just so bitchy with me because they asked me for extra of all of that stuff, and I gave them extra of all of that, and then they were like, this is way too much. I mean, we couldn't possibly use all of this. And then they're laying it on the counter in front of me, what they don't need of what I gave them. And in my head, I'm just like, okay, well, you said you wanted extra, and now you're complaining that I gave you extra. And I wouldn't have cared if they hadn't gone through the speech with me, because if they had just left it there, the extras that I gave them, the ones that were over what they wanted, I just left it there, I would have just scooped it up and, taken it back. But oh my God, we couldn't possibly use all of this. What are you doing? Like that kind of. And so for me, it's not, like I said, it's not really about the job itself or the people working the job, or I should say it's not the people that work the job, it's the treatment that you get when you're working there. And so if you know that you're on that rung, then stop trying to be a shot caller, which is something I know is a generational thing. Like Gen X, Gen Z, these people, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, these people really do have this idea that they run the entire world around them and that nobody is allowed to offend them or say anything that they might find offensive. And if all I had to worry about when I was working those kinds of jobs was people wearing shirts of things I didn't agree with, I would have had zero problems because I never pay attention to anybody's clothing that way anyway. The only time I pay attention to anybody's clothing is if I like what they're wearing. But I'm not a person who just runs around reading people's shirts. Or even a lot of the stuff I wear, I don't pay attention to. Like, I know that I like what I like, so a lot of times if you watch my videos, you'll notice I'm wearing Solin. That's a brand that I wear a lot. I'm not sponsored by them in any way. But they're company that works with tattoo artists, and that's why the designs, I like the designs on their shirts so much, because they'll have different famous tattoo artists or well-known tattoo artists design, it'll be like a limited edition of that particular person, and every week it's like a different tattooer that is featured. And so, I'll buy a fair amount of their stuff, but sometimes random things I'll just buy at like thrift stores, or I like going to Buffalo Exchange. I don't know if you guys have Buffalo Exchange, but it's a consignment store. And so basically like a high-end thrift store. And I will buy shirts there, and sometimes I don't know what the shirt I'm wearing really says or what it means. I just know that I like the design on it. I like the graphic, and so that's what I bought. But I'm not I'm not worried about what I wear, and I'm not worried about what other people wear. So I would have had no problems at all if that's all my problems were when I was working those jobs, But yeah, I guess. And also the thing is, sometimes I'll say things in a way that I know is going to be the funniest for the audience that's watching. And I do expect by now that there's always going to be new people that are watching me, just because that's the way YouTube works and that's the way an algorithm works is, some people that have never seen me before will be fed my stuff. But I do also know that there's a core audience that actually watches me regularly, and I expect them to get that I am a comedian. So of course I'm going to try to say things in the funniest way that I can possibly say them. Also, just in regular life, I don't have much of a filter. I watch what I say as far as what YouTube's guidelines are. I'm pretty familiar with those. Sometimes I get it wrong, and YouTube will have a little bit of a consequence for me, but I've kind of learned what I can and can't say on YouTube, and so I'll filter myself for that. But as far as filtering myself outside of that and worrying about everybody's feelings, that's just not something that I'm gonna do. And so even though I was nice to this guy because I know he watches regularly and I know that he probably means well and just didn't get that, I can't work around everybody's sensibilities all the time. I just can't, so because eventually you won't be able to say anything, it's like if you get mad at me because you don't like the way that I talked about like minimum wage workers in a video, and then somebody gets mad at me because they don't like the way that I talked about Latinos in a video, and then somebody gets mad at me because they didn't like the way that I talked about gay people in a video, and then somebody gets mad at me because they didn't like the way I talked about trans people in a video. If every time somebody had a feeling about something I said, what would I say and what would I be allowed to talk about? So my response to all of that is just like, cool. I don't mind hearing it. I don't mind reading it. That's what the comments are for. I don't mind people commenting. And if I ever feel like I'm really out of line, then I'll obviously correct my behavior. But I don't really see that happening because I really trust myself at this point. Like that's the other thing I don't think a lot of people fully understand is I am not a young man. And I'm not trying to say everybody thinks I'm so young. I think that sometimes people forget that when you get older, you just start caring a lot less about what it, because, you know, and then also being specifically Gen X, and that being a lot of my audience, we just don't have a lot of feelings like that. And I don't think a lot of other generations really understand that to the degree, like, you know, I can be talking with another Gen Xer and they can say something that I 100% do not agree with on any level. And I'll be thinking to myself, I really should find this offensive right now. I know I should. I know I should like really be mad at them for what they're saying because it's so opposite of my politics, of just the way I run my life. Just they're the opposite of everything that I'm saying. But they're Gen X too, so they're just talking. And so that's the way my brain interprets it. Is just like I'm just listening to another person that has a different point of view than I do. Because they're not saying anything disrespectful directly to me or about me. They're just telling me what their point of view is, and it happens to be the complete opposite of mine. And the only reason that I know that these things are supposed to offend me is because the younger generations, that's who I like reference in my mind at that point. Because the younger generations, you know, so many of the things that they hear is it's just like a trigger for them. And I'm really baffled by that. I'm kind of like, how do you guys live? How do you guys get through life in general? Because, you know, I don't know if, like, one of the things I think that would surprise people about me, about me is my interactions with the homeless. The unhoused. I am really respectful with homeless people. And it's because I really don't think, and believe me, I've gotten into it with homeless people too. And there will be times, sometimes, when if they really get sideways with me, because I'll tell you who has the worst homeless people in the world. San Francisco has the worst homeless people in the world. And the reason I say they're the worst homeless people in the world in San Francisco is because they're dealing with a lot of really far left. And so those people they'll empty their pockets for them. Literally, they'll, you know, if they have $1, they're giving it to them. And so they're very entitled. And so I'm always chill with homeless people in the way that I will always respond to them. You know, if they ask me for $1 and I don't have $1 on me, or I don't feel like I have $1 to spare, because if you've been to San Francisco, it's very expensive. If there's ever a place that you feel like, this place is breaking me right now, everything's expensive. A sandwich is expensive. A slice of pizza is expensive. Everything is expensive in San Francisco. And so I'm going to be honest, I don't always feel the most generous with people that are asking for money on the streets in San Francisco. And so, you know, I'll always politely tell people, no, I'm sorry, you know, I don't. And and a fair amount of people are good with it. But in San Francisco, I've had homeless people literally cuss me out just for me telling them that I didn't have a dollar to spare or I didn't have change. And so then, being me, I've cussed a fair amount of them out right back, and I don't regret it at all. But I am very, very cool with homeless people, and like it's one of the things that does bother me about certain friends I've had in the past, you know, because I've had friends in the past that think that the way to deal with homeless people is to completely pretend like they're not there. So I've seen homeless people ask them, you know, for a dollar or for change, and them not respond at all, and the homeless person think that they didn't hear them, so they ask again, and the person just ignore them again. And I really do. With women, I understand. But with men, I don't, you know, because with women, I get that women have a different way that you have to navigate the world because, you know, guys in general, including homeless guys, will flirt with you or say things that are inappropriate. And that's something I've seen a lot in my life when, you know, because I have so many female friends, the way that they have to like navigate things because it can turn into a more dangerous situation for them, or at the very least, a more demeaning situation for them. So I understand, you know, I never judge women on the way that they deal with the world, even though one thing that I learned from Oprah a long time ago that I would think that everybody should do, I personally think everybody should do, and you don't have to do it in an aggressive way at all, but I really feel like it's helped me out a lot in my life. And I learned this when I was super young because, you know, Oprah was on forever. And technically during Oprah's like heyday, I was young, like, you know, I want to say like 9. Like, I remember, you know, Oprah when I was super young. But anyway, my point is, there's one particular thing that I think was a good skill that I've always carried with me. She was talking to a man that was like an expert on like self-defense and kind of dealing with people and stuff like that. And he recommended that everybody make eye contact with pretty much everybody, you know, just like quick eye contact. And the reason you do that is it, even if subconsciously, lets them know that you notice them and that if they try anything, you might be more likely to be able to give a description of them. Like, you're very aware of your surroundings. And I've seen people do this, male and female, that just look down the entire time, like on a street. And I've seen it a lot because, you know, I'm kind of a big people watcher and I'm out in the world so much. Well, less lately, but, you know, doing stand-up for so long, I was out in the world a lot. And, you know, I know that in certain circumstances, I look like a scary person to a lot of people because of all the tattoos and stuff and the piercings and stuff. And so I don't ever worry about walking down an alley by myself. I don't like a lot of the stuff that people think about. Like, that's one thing where I had to kind of recalibrate a little bit because there were some people visiting Austin. And, you know, we were walking because, you know, Austin, you walk everywhere once you get to downtown, you know, like 6th Street is the main street, which RIP to the people and prayers for Austin, you know, because there was that big mass shooting last week or whatever, which I didn't find out about until days later or something. But, you know, and I didn't used to hang out on that part of 6th Street. That was West 6th Street. And like where everything's happening is like more east. You know, like the comedy and stuff like that. And so it's like Mothership is right, you know. Well, if you're coming from the west, the way that it works is there's Sunset Strip first, then there's Mothership next, then you go a little bit down the street, there's Vulcan, then right across the street from like Mothership is a place called Maggie Mae's that we would perform. Right across the street from Sunset Strip is another place, I can't remember the name of it, but it was it's a bar where they have gnarly Nar Bar is what they call it. It's Narbar. And then, kind of across from Vulcan is Velveeta Room. Then you go one street over, and then that's where the creek is. And so, but like, I get to a lot of things by going through the alley, because in a lot of cases that's quicker for me than dealing with 6th Street, because Thursday through Sunday they close it down after a certain hour, where it's like just kind of street fair style, and it gets so busy there that it's kind of like a Vegas type atmosphere. It's a Vegas type atmosphere. And so there's people like, just so much foot traffic in that area at that time. And so for me, a lot of times it's just easier to leave out of the back of one of the buildings, because all the places that I go, I'm performing, so I have access to go out through the back if I want to, and I know how all that works, and everybody knows me. And so I would just like leave through the alley, the exit in the alley, and then bust it wherever I gotta go, and even go in through certain alleys, the doors of certain alleys of different businesses. Like Vulcan was one that I would do that with all the time. And so, but anyway, there were some people visiting at one point, and so I told them if they wanted to go with me, to the other spot, we can go to the other spot. And they were dressed nice and stuff like that, had some money. And I just took them through the alleys with me, and they were like, I don't really know if I feel safe in this alley. And it like occurred to me, I was like, oh, I didn't really think about that. Like, for some people, these alleys may not seem safe, where for me, even the homeless people in Austin would kind of like, I got along with a lot of the homeless people in Austin. I didn't have problems with homeless people in Austin, but even the homeless people in Austin would kind of give me a look, sort of like, like I might be the scary guy. And if I keep my mouth shut, like, people know me from my channel and they know my personality and stuff, but you have to remember, these people aren't hearing my voice and aren't seeing my personality. They're just a random person in an alley, and so they're like thinking that I may be a threat in some way or whatever. And I'm fine to have people think that, because I'd rather have them think that than have to worry about my safety, because they think whatever else, they think I might be a mark or somebody that they may be able to actually rob or, get something from. But yeah, I'm really not, I'm not at all snotty, and I don't like look down on people for what their job is or, what their houses look like. Like, not too long ago, one of my friends, his sister wanted to meet me. This is one of my really good friends, and his sister wanted to meet me, and his sister has this really cool house. And I told him, because she wanted to meet me, and he was like, hey, I just wanted to find out, because, she knows me from my YouTube channel. And so he was like, hey, I just wanted to find out. It's cool if you say no. I get it. I understand. But my sister really wants to meet you. And so I was like, yeah, of course. And so I sat and talked to her for a while. It was when I went to pick him up. And I sat and talked to her for a while, and we had a good conversation. And like the whole time I was just like, because we were in front of her house, because he stays there when he comes to town, and we were in front of her house, and I'm just thinking in my head, this looks like a really cool house. I would love to see this house, but I didn't want to put her on the spot, so later on we were in the car, and me and him, after we left, and I was like, I want to see your sister's house sometime. I was like, it looks really cool. And he was like, yeah, it is really cool. He was like, but it's very homey, because, she's got kids, and she, is a crafts type person. She does crafts and stuff like that. And I was just like, yeah, that's what I want to see. Because, I mean, like, yeah, it looks like a cool design to the house or whatever. But I mean, like, I've met so many people in my life, whether it was people I was dating, people I was hanging out with, friends of friends, other comedians. I've met so many people in my life that have so much money that, like, literally mansions, like, that I go in their houses and it has no personality. Like, really, it feels like an Airbnb or in some cases a museum. And there's really no feeling inside that house, And so I think that's probably the best thing about what I'm saying right now, or the best way to get across what it is I'm trying to say right now, is that I really do worry more or think more about what's going on inside of a person rather than any of the outside. Because I've met so many people with so much money that either didn't have the best personalities or weren't secure enough in themselves, or just weren't nice people in some cases. And then, you meet other people that maybe do live in the projects or maybe don't have the most going on as far as what their career is or what their job is. Because some people don't even have careers, they literally have jobs. And so really what I judge people off of, and what's most important to me, is what people actually are and what they're actually giving the world, or what they're actually contributing as far as the feelings that they, like, are able to convey or make other people feel. And so, yeah, if I ever refer to somebody's job as being a shitty job, or somebody being, like, even ugly, a lot of times when I say somebody's ugly, I'm not talking about their physical appearance, even though that might be ugly too. It might be just a case of the cover telling you exactly what's going on in the pages. And so that's a part of what I expect people to understand when they watch me as well on my main channel, is like, you have to get that I'm talking about more context than just whatever it is I'm talking about. You know what I mean? Like, if I talk about somebody's shitty job, I'm demeaning what it is they are, because they're demeaning everything around them or not respecting everything around them. If I say somebody's ugly, it's because what they put out in the world is ugly. And so I'm not going to be changing the way that I talk about things. I don't really care about anybody's feelings that way. And it just is what it is, and it ain't what it ain't, so stay unbothered.